Well, you'd be pleased to hear the answer is we do hold quite a lot of weight on evidence. I think it depends again on your focus. So if I wear very briefly, the kind of commercial hat, well, actually, if you can't generate evidence and your users can't see the evidence of impact of the technology you use, the general rule is you're a short-lived solution. And that's not good for anybody, certainly not good for the business, and it's not good for schools, because schools want to make sure that investment actually makes a return and does what it's supposed to do. So I think that's why I'm a very strong advocate in the first place of co-production, because I think you need to create what's needed, not what you think people will need, and that element of collaboration is actually how you create great solutions. And if you're smart, you realize by listening and learning, you actually produce a better product. So it's a win-win from that point of view. If I take it from a trust perspective, we absolutely are very much evidence focused. I think what's happened the last 18 months, I must say, is, I absolutely support all the points that Kathy's highlighted there. But we've also looked and said, actually, some of the things we've done, some of the changes we've made, the way that we've adopted technology, perhaps we also need to reflect on the way that we measure evidence. So where we naturally will look at where can we see evidence of progress in terms of our children's learning, we're also trying to think a bit more strategically about actually some of the technology we've adopted, the equipment that we've installed. It might have a longer term impact, whether it's on staff morale and staff retention. And that's taking a much bigger strategic view about tools that might help save time or make work easier, or investments on additional CPD, as Kathy referenced, and actually building confidence. So rather than enforcing a scriptive approach to how technology should or shouldn't be used, trusting the educator front of room to use where appropriate. Again, somebody from an EdTech perspective will be shocked when I say one of our biggest lessons learned is less is more. Let's do a few things, introduce them, establish them well, and build confidence and evidence rather than try and do too many things. It's not a race for who's got the most tech. So very much shaped around that aspect. And I think the other evidence is, again, I'm always an advocate, and we talked before the show a little bit from a skills perspective. We start to get into muddy areas. It's perhaps outside of that core curriculum bit, but thinking about students' digital skills, digital citizenship, and other aspects, sometimes by putting the right processes and measures in place to support and educate, you actually, in the short term, create greater visibility of content or activities that young people are doing. And so it'd be very easy to get a false positive and say, as a result of that, things are getting worse. But actually, initially, it's about having greater visibility. And then I think the other one, which ties in that bigger picture, thinking trust-wise, is all these different solutions that we select and hopefully evidence for the right reason. We also want to make sure the data we gather is used for a purpose. And that purpose itself needs to be evidence that it's not data for data's sake, but it's data that actually facilitates the ability for a teacher to leverage that and use it for something that will allow for interventions and support. So I think what we have definitely learned, much as the physical has been a barrier, is actually this isn't a singular point of view. It's actually bringing all the stakeholders together, and the collaborative working is probably more important than ever for us to get a bigger picture kind of measure of what we mean by evidence and impact.